Hey guys, what's up? It is Ripe again, back with more HOA, Neighbors from Hell and Revenge stories. In today's title story, OP is confronted with a crazy HOA that threatens to fine him for literally everything, even though he did not even join the HOA to begin with. Without wasting any more time, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, HOA claims I must join them and threatens to fine me if I don't remove my illegal pool. I have lived in the same house for the last 15 years with my wife, 2 daughters and our 2 dogs. It's a beautiful home with a pool and a big yard that the kids love to run around in. My wife and I bought the house together right after we got married. We live in a wonderful, quiet neighborhood and have never had any sort of problems. We keep up with the maintenance of our home as it is our pride and joy and has been for the last 15 years. We obviously have a lot of memories in this home and it is especially important to us as a family. Up until recently, we have never had any issues living in our home. However, a couple of years ago, a petition started circling around the neighborhood in order to create an HOA. I admit I was against this from the beginning. We had happily lived in our neighborhood for 15 years without an HOA and I was not sure what compelled people to think we needed one. When some of the neighbors talked to my wife and I about forming an HOA, I had stated my opinion and advised against it. Some people were like me and completely against the HOA, but to my surprise more than enough people voted for the HOA because late in 2020 the neighborhood officially formed the Homeowners Association. However, even though the HOA formed, I refused to sign the papers that would make my family and I join them. It just was not something that I agreed with, and some of the rules they were already talking about would be heartbreaking and expensive to my family and me. They continually pressured me to join the HOA even though I told them countless times that I was not willing to because of the rules. Some of the rules I would not mind meeting in the middle, but other rules just did not make sense to me. While I had never been a part of an HOA before, I had only heard bad things about it and ridiculous rules they would make you follow. I definitely did not have a good impression of HOAs. For example, one of the rules they were trying to impose on us was that we could not have any large dogs over 50 pounds. One would think that this would only apply to people who adopted dogs after the HOA was formed, but this also included the dogs that people had before the HOA. I have 2 large dogs, 1 black Labrador and 1 border collie that we have had since our daughters were born. They have not known life without these dogs and are extremely attached to them, and it would be absolutely devastating to them if we got rid of them. It seems completely unreasonable that we would be required to get rid of our beloved pets that we adopted before the HOA was formed. The next rule was that no houses could have in-ground pools. This does not make sense as more than half of the homes in the neighborhood had an in-ground pool built with the original blueprints of the house. To completely remove our pool and renovate the backyard would cost us thousands of dollars. Besides this, one of the reasons we fell in love with the house is because of the backyard and pool. Our daughters also love the pool and spend many afternoons swimming in the pool. How were we supposed to explain to them that we were no longer allowed to have the pool? The third issue was that the HOA said our home was not aligned with the rules and regulations they were putting in place for the aesthetics of the neighborhood. The first issue is that they claimed our roof was the wrong color. We had just had our roof redone about 3 years ago and I didn't see how the color of the roof was an issue because it matched the house and the rest of the neighborhood. Well, they had wanted everyone's roof to be the same color. On top of the ridiculous roof requirements, they also had an issue with our front doors, the trim color on our window frames, the type of grass our front lawn had, and the material and color of our wood fence around the house. We also weren't allowed to park our cars in the street and were not allowed to park in our own driveway. We also weren't allowed to have our RV parked anywhere where it would be visible. This was one of the most ridiculous rules because we didn't have a garage, so where are we supposed to park our cars? The HOA said everyone had 3 months to fix all of these violations and get their house ready for inspection to make sure that everything was within the HOA guidelines. To fix everything they wanted would be unreasonably expensive, and to be quite honest, at that point, with as much as it would cost, we were better off moving and buying a new house. I obviously didn't want to move or buy a new house, as my kids are growing up in this house and my wife and I have created our lives within our home. We live in a small town in rural Texas, so finding a lawyer was not by any means easy. All of these changes were ridiculous, and word got around in the neighborhood that people were starting to regret voting in the HOA. Most people thought there might be a few rules and minor changes to their homes, but did not think it would be this extreme. While some people were willing to make some of these changes, I was not. I was so determined to find a good lawyer and fight the violations, especially the ones regarding the pool and the dogs, since this was stuff that I had before the HOA. So, with some extensive research, I was able to find a lawyer that actually specialized in HOA cases. After gathering all the info and as much evidence as I could, I presented it to the lawyer with the hopes of getting the HOA disbanded. If I could not get the HOA disbanded, I at least hoped it was enough information to change the regulations they had put into place or get rid of some of them altogether. With all the information I had, and plus with the HOA constantly pressuring me to join them, I was able to take the case to court and win against them. They ended up having to pay fines to all the members of the HOA because some of their rules were not legal. I learned that as long as some of the stuff was done before the HOA, like the pool, that they could not legally make us change it. Some of the neighbors had already started making the changes to their home, and while most of them were minor, they got all their fees paid back to them. The neighborhood voted on disbanding the HOA after I won the case because they realized that the rules they were imposing were useless and added no value or benefits to us or our homes. And yeah guys, that is the story of how one man essentially took down an entire HOA. Or at least he started the process. If you have watched until here and enjoy the stories about crazy HOAs, then please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support the channel. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, it is very much appreciated and I am very grateful to have you. Either way, let's move on with the stories. The next one is titled, "You mess with my truck, I mess with your phone." This story happened about 12 years ago. I was working for a company that owned intellectual property rights to some automotive aftermarket tech. It was headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona. In 2002, the owner of the company suggested to his employees the possibility of relocating the whole business to San Diego. The company was very small, only about 5 people in the whole organization, and all of the co-workers knew each other and were more or less friends either with each other or with the CEO. The boss insisted that we all had a vote, and if anyone voted against the move, the company would stay. We all voted unanimously to move to San Diego, and our first couple years we ended up all living in the same apartment complex in Mission Valley. The new office location was intentionally headquartered across the street from the apartment community, which, as you might imagine, was very convenient. In those days, I drove a new pickup truck, and since my office was across the street, I didn't drive my vehicle much except on weekends or special trips. As a result, the vehicle remained parked for long periods of time in the covered parking area of the garage. One day I went out to my vehicle to find a hefty trash bag dumped in the back of my truck. Naturally, I found it a bit creepy and off-putting. When I hopped onto the bed of the truck to haul it out, I found to my utter disgust that it was dripping wet with juices from rancid meat of some kind, I think probably chicken. At this point, I angrily decided that I was going to figure out who did this, even if I have to manually sort through every item of trash in this stinking kitchen bag. I donned some latex gloves and went to work fishing item by item piecemeal from the rotting trash bag. Eventually, I struck pay dirt. I found a utility bill envelope that had been crumbled up. I opened it up and discovered that the culprit was one of my coworkers who fancied himself a bit of a prankster. Said offender, I will call him Cam, lived in the same apartment phase as I did, just a few doors down. First, a little context. Back in those days, I was fascinated with lockpicking. I owned, among other things, a lockpick gun, which admittedly requires very little skill to operate. Aside from that, it is convenient because they are quicker than using a rake or individual picks. I also owned some basic phone testing equipment, including a grey bar telco lineman test set. With some effort, I succeeded to locate the telco phone utility closet on my floor and was able to let myself in. I don't remember if I had to use an NI line to identify Cam's circuit or whether the termination points were labeled, but I did manage to locate the ring and tip for his pair. Then, using the lineman set, I was able to use *70 to activate the call forwarding feature. This was SBC AT&T in those days. I forwarded all of his calls to the local Jack in the Box restaurant. More context, my coworkers all teased me incessantly because I refused to eat at Jack in the Box because, well, I simply didn't like the food. This would make it subtly obvious at some point that I was the person responsible, since Jack in the Box was a running office joke by this time. After forwarding his line, I cross-connected the ring and tip, which shorted the line out. Status: line was dead and calls were forwarded to Jack in the Box. I let Cam believe that I had hacked his phone service provider switch, yes he was gullible, and let him beg for 2 days before undoing the damage. Meanwhile, everyone in the office thought it was the funniest revenge they had ever heard of and agreed the response was appropriate. And damn, ripe stars, I gotta say, some people just have such interesting hobbies. Honestly, I've never heard of lockpicking as a hobby before outside of actual thieves. But it does sound like an interesting hobby. But now I am curious, do you have any interesting hobbies? Feel free to share with us in the comments. For me personally, outside of riding motorcycles and doing Reddit videos, there's not that much interesting stuff that I do. The next one is titled Dispense BS, Receive BS. I took a job as IT assistant for a local firm and the boss, IT manager, we shall call him PA for passive aggressive or positively arrogant if you prefer. PA had been with the company for about 17 years. During this time he wrote a custom web solution involving thousands of files, as well as a hardware solution that was almost completely lacking in documentation, let alone adequate documentation. I should have suspected something was up when he took me into a server room with a sea of Ethernet cables labeled only on one end leading into various holes in the wall. When I asked what was the meaning of the cryptic numbers on the cables, A1 to A4 for example, and was referred to a topical map with only 8 numbers and nothing else, I knew I was in trouble. At least he made an attempt to write some wikis about how to do this or that, but they were so vague all they would do was serve for his reminders but would not work for anyone else. Before me, he had hired a procession of assistants only to have them let go for no rhyme nor reason, according to a coworker. He would belittle me for taking so long to do tasks, telling me I should take calculated risks about what I was supposed to do, but programmers are taught to be thorough and to not take risks with company data by doing things you are not sure of. He would be so rude and insulting when he had no time to guide me or help me understand his custom system. I have to admit, his code was great, but his attitude was guaranteed to put anyone off from wanting to ask him anything. Towards the end of the job there, I was so stressed out, it was literally killing me. People would remark that I looked white as a sheet and ready to drop. I couldn't sleep at night and I had to crawl to the bathroom because I would black out trying to walk at night. Well, after a year he decided he was going to take a vacation and leave everything to me for a month. He also sprung on me an unannounced project of importing data to be done in 2.5 hours on the first Monday after he left. The data import alone took about 4 hours, so how in the hell he thought I could do this huge data import in the time expected was beyond me. The day I was let go, he told me that I was not a good fit for the company and they let me go with severance pay, which was nice, but during the interview he cited 3 projects I did not get done in time, and after I left I realized that one of them was a project he told me to stop working on and another was a project to upgrade some software they had spent money on, but I discovered bugs in the software and was told to not install it until the bugs were fixed. It took the makers of the software 6 weeks to fix the bugs, and I got commendation from them and the president of the company I worked at for being very helpful in tracking down the bugs. After I got home, I realized PA let me go, blaming me for late projects he told me to delay on. I also began to remember all the insulting things he said and I began to figure it out. This delay in figuring out what happened is a feature of PTSD. I was friends with the owner of the company and I wrote him an email about the issues. I told him how he keeps rehiring people to do IT assistant work and yet required them to already know the custom system he built over a period of 17 years. I mentioned how he refused to help new hirees familiarize themselves with the code. Heck, it was only after 10 months that I was given access to the code to even look at. I asked him if he didn't find it suspicious that he would hire someone, go on a large vacation and then come back and fire them. I said, how many assistant IT people have company name gone through and how many more will company name go through before they realize that the person they are looking for doesn't exist, and also start to insist that PA teach the new hire the ropes. It was right after this that PA was told that no new hires would be accepted and that new coding would have to be done out of house, aka hire contract programmers. None in the area wanted to touch the project, so they ended up hiring a team from India. PA, possibly because he lacked interpersonal skills, got so frustrated having to explain what code he wanted was supposed to do, finally quit with the statement, "I'm tired of all the BS." He now works as a programmer elsewhere, but thankfully he is not supervising anyone else. PS, in case the revenge was missed, he ended up with a job that had less prestige and less pay, no underlings to abuse like he did others. It was a job that they frequently offered to college students for $10 to $12 an hour. I don't know what he got before, but I know it was good enough for him to take a month vacation in Vietnam. It caused him difficulty, it made me feel somewhat better and somewhat vindicated, and a hell of a lot better to know he would not be able to mistreat another person. And guys, if you have any interesting stories about awful co-workers or bosses or managers or anything like that from hell, then please feel free to share your own story either in the comments or on r/ripe stories on Reddit, where there is a good chance that I might read your story in a future video. And Ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional Ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support and I hope to see you again tomorrow.